I'll show you now how ICT Project Management Policy looks like and how to fill it out to be compliant with DORA EU cybersecurity regulation. Now, this document is mandatory according to Article 15 of CDR 2024-1774, and this CDR is basically a kind of an appendix to DORA regulation, so you can't avoid this kind of a document. And on top of this, it's very useful to have this kind of a document because it defines clear rules on how to run bigger IT projects within your company. And typically every company has these kind of projects, and this is the best way really to reduce the project risk and I would say increase the chances that the project outcomes are achieved. Okay, I'm showing you now ICT Project Management Policy from DORA Documentation Toolkit. And as you can see here on this first page, you have this typical information like the document title, the codes, version, date of version, author, approver, confidentiality level. On the second page, you typically have change history, so how has the document changed throughout its various versions, and the table of contents. And then when we move on to the third page, then you see that this is where the main part of the document starts. I'll go back to this main part in a minute. Let me first explain you the structure of the document, so the table of contents. So in the purpose, scope and users, you basically define what is the purpose of this document, where does it apply to which activities in your company, and also who are the users, so who are the people that need to read it. Reference documents, this is where you refer to relevant CDRs and let's say ISO 27001 standard and so on. And then the third section is the main one, which explains the basic rules for project management. So 3.1 here is where you define governance, so basically what are the roles and responsibilities. Also 3.2, who needs to report and how and when. Also 3.3 for each and every project, how do you set the objectives, how you need to plan these projects. 3.4, you define how you assess the risks, project risks, and how you mitigate those project risks. 3.5, you define how you actually implement all the changes that are happening because of this project. And 3.6, this is how you test and approve, let's say, new applications or changes to these existing applications that you are making as part of this project. And then section 4 is about validity and document management. This is where you define who is the document owner, how often it needs to be reviewed, and so on. Now, moving to the main part of the document. As you can see, most of this document is already predefined, and typically you have to fill out the areas where there are these square brackets. So in this case, you need to fill out your company name. Let's say this is Test Incorporated. And then you move on. Here you can see that there is this reference to this Commission delegated regulation, and on the right hand side you also have the link to this very document. So if you click this link, you will actually see the full text of this CDR. And of course you can also add some other things here. So suggested here is that you add some methodology for project management if you're using any, so you can refer to any kind of methodology here. And then comes the section 3.1, where you define this governance structure. So you have suggested here project sponsor, project manager, project team, and so on. So let's say that you are a very small company that you do not need a project team, so you simply delete this one. And this is how it looks like. So it's very easy to edit the document since this is an ordinary Word document. And again, here you have this for each ICT project. Then you have certain job title, appoints the above mentioned roles. And here you can actually see also in the comment suggestions on who this might be. So let's say, what is the job title of person in charge of overseeing security? This is typically the CEO or other executive. This is in charge of overseeing security. So let's say in this case, you want this to be the Chief Technology Officer. So simply delete this and write Chief Technology Officer. And you move on. And this is how you go through the document and simply adapt this document to your specific circumstances in the company and align this with your existing processes. Now, you'll have to make lots of decisions within this document, for example, around what are the mandatory roles for each and every project, what kind of reporting is needed and how often, and so on. Typically, these decisions will be proposed by the person who is in charge of this document. This would be usually Chief Information Security Officer, or maybe if you have a professional project management office, then someone from this office. And these things will need to be decided by someone from the senior management. This is typically a senior executive who is in charge of cybersecurity and resilience. And the main challenge here is really to align all the interests in the company of all the people concerned, because this kind of a document will be relevant for lots of projects in the company. and everyone would like actually these rules are appropriate for different types of projects. And for that purpose, you really have to raise awareness of all these stakeholders and explain them why this document is important, and of course try to find common ground between all of them. But again, ultimately it's the senior management who needs to make these kind of decisions. And also there is this challenge of writing this kind of a document, and for that purpose I'll show you now how to use Document Wizard from DORA Documentation Toolkit to speed up the writing of this document. Okay, once you log into this DORA Documentation Toolkit application, you scroll down to this folder 8, Cybersecurity Measures. And then you scroll down to this ICT Project Management Policy. As you can see, lots of documents here. ICT Project Management Policy, you click it, and then you will see this wizard, which actually helps you speed up the filling out of these documents. What is the name of the person who approved this document? Let's say this is John Smith. What is the confidentiality level? So I'll say that this is not confidential, this is internal use. And then I click next. What is the job title of the person in charge of overseeing security? Let's say this is CTO. Next. Who is the owner? CISO. Who is the job title of the person to approve this document? CEO. As you can see, most of these fields are already pre-filled because I already used this application for writing some other documents, and then the application actually remembered what I filled out there, and it is suggesting automatically the most likely answers to these questions for all the further documents. So this is how it speeds up the whole process, because you do not have to write everything for each and every document. This is something that the software already suggests you upfront. Anyway, you click here, download, and you will see in a couple of seconds that you will be able to open the document. Okay, so this is how the document looks like when you download it to your local disk. It's basically very similar to the one that I've shown you before. But the changes here are that it's already filled out through the wizard. So for example, here you see this logo, and I actually uploaded this logo previously when I filled out these other documents through this documentation toolkit. It already filled out the document name. It already filled out the approver, as you can see, also the confidentiality level. When I scroll further, you will see also that the company name is here, also the confidentiality level is here. And let's see what else it filled out. Okay, so it filled out the company name, and you can see here that it also filled out the CTO is the person to appoint these roles. So this is basically how it speeds up the writing of this document. Hope this was helpful, and to see for yourself this ICT Project Management Policy, sign up for a free trial of DORA Documentation Toolkit. Click the link in the description below, and you'll be able to see a free demo of this document, but also of other documents from this toolkit, and you'll also be able to try how this document wizard works. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos every week. Thanks for watching.